right? Brand new year, brand new resolution to be better, right? And what happens with a new year? Well, it's not like the Vietnamese New Year, but since you guys do live in America, it's like the American New Year's, right? And then you're like, all right, what happens during the New Year's? Every single year, what do people do? They make New Year's resolutions, right? And it's like, you know, you're gonna start doing X, Y, and Z, or you're gonna stop doing things of like X, Y, and Z, right? There's always like two common themes with New Year's resolution. And if you watch the news or when you know anything about like the real world, it's always about like two things, right? The most common New Year's resolution is lose weight. You've heard that before. You've seen it from adults. I know some of you guys are not thinking about losing weight, but it's kind of funny. And the other thing, like other common New Year's resolution would be like, hey, let's save money, right? Yeah, so those are the two like major New Year's resolutions. It's funny though, it's really, really interesting how many of us actually make like New Year's resolution to become spiritually better? Right? Think about it. Like who actually, if you ask like all of your classmates or something like, hey, what's your New Year's resolution? What's yours? What's yours? What's yours? I bet you not a single one is going to say, I want to become spiritually and morally better. That's never on like people's minds, which is really kind of interesting, right? And I wanted to make the point that like since you guys are young, you're in school, right? And by virtue of being in school, you're constantly gaining knowledge, right? Every day there's a new objective that you have to learn in school, new math lesson, new history, reading lesson, etc. So you're gaining a lot of knowledge, but to what extent are you gaining wisdom, right? That's something interesting for you guys to think about, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, new year, fresh start. Here's my challenge to you guys, because sometimes, with the coming of the new year, you get to reflect back on the old year. But you also want to set certain goals for yourself, right? And the challenge that I wrote down is that in 1 year, will you know more about Buddhism than right now, right? And I wonder if, upon reflecting from last year, how much more Buddhism do you guys know about being here right now, like sitting here, because this program started like about a year ago, right? And so I wonder how much more do you know about Buddhism? And if not a lot, right, or if you can't recall a lot of facts, then the challenge would be how much more can you gain a year from now? So I'll probably ask you, I'll be asking, hopefully I'll be here asking you the same question, which is how much have you gained, right, within the span of 1 year? I think passively, like receiving knowledge, it's a good thing, it's a good start, but you have to actively like question yourself or questioning things, right? And I think it was your sister who's like finally asking me a question or whatever. And I think asking a question represents like the next level of learning / understanding, right? The more you begin to be able to ask questions, like that's how you ascend to like this ladder of wisdom. What I wrote was that the more questions you ask, the more you're able to peel off this like veil of ignorance, right? Because right now, the basic premise is like our eyes are being covered, right? And so you're trying to uncover like the real truth. The truth about reality, the truth about life, right? And how do you do so? By just asking questions, like, and every question you ask is like you taking a layer off of like this veil that's like covering your eyes, right? And it's interesting how like every time I speak, I'm talking with this emphasis on the word you, like capital Y-O-U, right? How much are you going to be gaining from this, these lectures? How much are you like developing yourself spiritually? And it's really interesting because I will close off with like what the final words of the Buddha, like what he said at the very end of his life. What am I trying to get at? You have to be the owner of your own liberation / salvation, right? No one, I mean, it's interesting. Like you sit here. I wonder if you sit here by choice or not, or you listen by choice or not. But if somebody forced you to like study Buddhism, and then you feel like it's being forced down upon you, then that's never. Well, A, it's uncomfortable, but B, I think you're not going to find answers. You're not going to get the most benefits if you feel like you don't want to be here. That's the basic idea, right? No one else can save you. Your parents can't save you. Your siblings can't save you. No one can save you in this lifetime except for yourself. And the emphasis is on the capital Y-O-U. Because you are the owner of your own choices. You have your own karma. Everything that you do follows you, right? And it's again, capital Y-O-U, okay? So that's just something for you guys to think about. So let me just very quickly recap, and it's going to take like 3 minutes. Because I'm going to connect it to this Y-O-U thing for 2020, right? Keep in mind that like the Buddha, like, you know, now it's like 2,600 years ago. He sat down this Bodhi tree, right? Because he's been going through this journey, trying to figure out like what's the meaning of life, right? He tried to nearly like starve himself, kill himself, like become very live an ascetic life. He lived in a cave. He ate very little, right? All so that he can try to figure out the truth, right? He just tried to like discard the body type of deal so that he can figure out like, okay, if the body isn't there and the mind or the spirit's left over, maybe that can help me find the truth. So he sat the like you guys should know, like even in the painting in the back, I don't know if you guys ever noticed that tree in the background, right? Of this painting in the back, right? He sat next to a Bodhi tree, and he meditated for hours and days until he finally awoke into the truth, right? And so, and this is like a famous story, right? And then he realized like, okay, there are like these like 4 noble truths about life, and that we kind of go on through our lives through this cycle of rebirth, like constantly, right? And he thought to himself, wow, it's kind of funny, right? Like after like meditating for hours and reflecting on these like truths, he realized, hey, everybody just goes through life, especially through this cycle of rebirth. It's something that very few people can understand, right? And even see that like, hey, all your karma follows you into your next lifetime, etc., etc. And he says, everyone can actually stop this cycle of rebirth, right? Everyone can stop this. But it's funny how they don't. They don't try to. Basically, the point of this is saying this idea that like the seed of Buddhahood is within all of us, right? It's in you, the capital Y-O-U. And so it's up to you to awaken that seed of Buddhahood. And it comes down to like, hey, paying attention and learning to cultivate your own wisdom. So I kind of did this lecture not based off of anything that I was reading, but more of like off of the question that one of you guys asked, right? Which is this big idea. Isn't the pursuit of nirvana a type of desire? And isn't like the whole Buddhist tradition to say let go of attachments, let go of desires, like yeah, let everything go? And I mean, I thought that was a great question. I had a like satisfactory answer, but I kind of wanted to delve in a little bit more. And I wanted to say like, if you guys notice, and I mentioned it earlier, the start of asking a question is the start of when you start cultivating your wisdom, right? And then the more questions you're able to ask, the more your wisdom grows. But if you sit there passively and just receive content, sure you'll develop, but slower than the person who's willing to take the risk and ask the questions, right? So back to that question, is pursuit of the nirvana a type of desire? And it sounds very, very contradictory, but not so much. And there's like lots of ways of answering this, right? And I think, and this is a very roundabout way of answering this question, but I'll just dive in, right? I wanted to say like the first step is awareness of this hamster wheel. And I want to bring this analogy into your brains. Like, there's a hamster wheel that we are riding, right? And who's in control of the hamster wheel? The hamster. And who's the hamster? It's you, right? And so every time that you are like moving with your paws and stuff like that, that's all your karma, that's all of your actions, etc., etc. And it's leading for this wheel to be turning, right? And the first step is actually awareness of this idea that you're actually, you are the hamster in the hamster wheel. I mean, how many people, if you walk outside, you ask them about life, can they really articulate this idea that, oh yeah, we're a hamster in a hamster wheel, we're going through cycles of rebirth. Maybe not everyone speaks that language, but and I can't say that this is a fact, but this is an idea, right? And so, the first thing is awareness. And when I talk about awareness of being on the hamster wheel, it's awareness of the diagnostic of the human condition, right? What was it that the Buddha said, right? All of life is suffering, right? Everything is temporary. This is the human condition. To some extent, if you look deeply into it, and it's up to you to look and reflect deeply into it, to what extent is this guy, is what the Buddha said true, right? Is all of life suffering? You know, it's worth exploring for yourself. But this key part about awareness, very, very interesting. And I want you to think about something. It's like a thought experiment, right? When I said not everyone is aware that they are on this hamster wheel or in this cycle of rebirth, we can do a very quick experiment to prove to you what I mean. Did you guys know that at this very moment, you guys are breathing? And it's funny, right? I wonder which one of you guys took a little breath and like felt yourself breathing, right? Because you've been breathing all this time, otherwise you would be dead. However, I brought to your attention your awareness that you are breathing, right? And then you checked to see that you were breathing, right? So it's interesting, because this is what I'm talking about, like awareness. Like we know certain things to be true, but until your brain is brought alert to it, you don't know. So my question is this, right? And this is a really interesting, like philosophical question. Does a fish know that it's in water? Does a fish know that's breathing in water? Okay, think about it. I wonder to what extent a fish actually knows it's in water, right? I mean, it would know once you take it out of water. But imagine a fish that grew up all its life in the deep ocean somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, right? It's been swimming there for ages. And it's never gone above water. Does it really know that it's in water? I don't know. And I wrote this question, how can I miss something so fundamental? And so I kind of want to equate like a fish to us, right? If a fish can't tell that it's in water, to some extent, like the vast majority of fishies, they can't tell that it's in water, that's kind of equal to us, right? To what extent do we know the basic conditions of life? To what extent are we aware of like this philosophy about life, the truths about life, if you would say, right? And so that's why I said like the first step of like, just like the pursuit of studying Buddhism and stuff like that is just learning to cultivate this awareness, right? Which is really fascinating. And so once you like become aware, and once you become awake, that's when you can really take action, right? To, like, when you become aware of this idea that life is a cycle of rebirth, then you can begin to tell the hamster, which is you, that you can actually stop this wheel from turning, right? And that's the goal of Nirvana. Can you stop this wheel of rebirth from turning? Can you escape the wheel entirely, right? So oh, again, back to this concept of awareness, right? The second you become aware, you begin to see things that other people can't see, which is a power in itself. And something that like in Buddhism that they preach a lot, don't be attached to materialistic things, right? Do you know how many people like you see on a daily basis, especially when it comes like Christmas time? What happens during Christmas time? Everybody wants presents, right? They want things. And then certain people, when they don't get their presents, they feel so bad. They're like, oh my God, somebody with so-and-so doesn't care for me, doesn't love me, etc., etc. And it's funny because like, you know, the holidays, it's a time of like, just like fueling this idea of this need to get things, right? To buy things, to give things, like this whole realm of like materialistic things. But if you're a true Buddhist, right, does it matter what you gotta give or not? I mean, maybe not. Maybe you guys are too young to understand, but I kind of think like the older you get, the more deeply you realize, like, hey, everything is temporary. There's no need to be attached to things, right? It's really fascinating. And then when you get to that level of understanding, that level of awareness, you realize, gosh, you know, greed, anger, and ignorance, those things have no power over you. And so that's the thing, right? The vast majority of people who are asleep or not awake, they are, to some extent, like slaves to all these things in the world, like greed and, you know, power, anger, ignorance, right? That the slaves to it. But the more you become awake, then you realize, oh yeah, these things are actually illusions. They have no power, right? So that's something interesting to see. So again, all this is to answer this question: is the pursuit of nirvana a type of desire? Okay. So I kind of want you to imagine like a scale, 0 to 100. Okay. 0 is the height of ignorance. 0 means you just like live your life. You're like, you know, space cadet. You know, you do the basic things: eat, sleep, work, school. You never stop to even reflect. And you know, it's sad, but some people just never stop to reflect. They just do things, right? And they don't even see themselves. And then I want you to imagine that. So 0 is ignorance, right? 0 is ignorance. 100 would be considered like nirvana, like the Buddha, basically, right? Now, this scale, 0 to 100, right? You guys are all on this scale, whether you like it or not. Everybody's on this scale. You're either on the 0 end or working towards 100, right? I would say you guys are closer to 10, right? Somewhere around 10. Why? Because you have maybe a little bit higher than 10. I would say 10 are the people who show up to temple, like maybe during holidays. You know, they come, they bow to the Buddha, they donate money, they go home. They have a baseline understanding of Buddhism. They're like, oh yeah, there's the Buddha, he's enlightened, and that's all they know. And they understand like, oh yeah, there's a religion, there's something spiritual about the Buddha, but they don't know anything else beyond that, right? At least they're aware of something. So that around 10. I would argue you guys are closer to 20, right? In terms of like your path towards nirvana, towards like stopping this hamster wheel. Why? Well, I mean, if you come every day, well not every day, the first 2 weeks of every month or something like that, and you like pay attention to the lessons or to some extent, you get closer and closer to 100, right? And you begin to cultivate wisdom, right? And the more questions you ask, I would say, you go closer and closer towards 100, right? Because when you become an adult, you're able to ask even deeper questions. And then that's when you get to 100. I'd say like the monk here or something, he's around like 80, 90, right? In terms of like his level of wisdom, his level of understanding, everything, right? And it's like, if you do all this stuff, like meditate and stuff, and put into practice, you get closer and closer to 100, which is the ultimately end goal. So, is the pursuit of nirvana a type of desire? The answer is yes and no, okay? I'll tell you why it's yes. It's yes because you're trying to accomplish your goal here. Like, if you understand the basic conditions of life, if you agree with the diagnostic from the Buddha, then the idea is that, like, you're going to be stuck in this hamster wheel forever until you become aware, until you understand that, hey, you can get off. And here's the path to getting off this hamster wheel, right? In order to even like stop this wheel from spinning, you have to set a goal for you to stop it, right? If you don't set the goal for yourself, no one else is. Because that wheel is going to keep turning for you guys. It's going to keep turning for every single other person out there, right? But here's the most fascinating thing. Let's just say you walk down this path, right? And you're like trying to get the hamster wheel stopped or trying to find liberation. I think the byproduct of trying to pursue this goal, what's the byproduct? The byproduct is that you become a more spiritual person and you lead a more moral life, right? Which is really interesting. And imagine the alternative. Imagine if you say, okay, desiring nirvana equals desire, and the Buddha said you shouldn't have any desire of anything, so you know what? I'm not going to even try. I'm just going to live my life. That's the alternative. Like, you either like go live, try to like follow the path of the Buddha, or say, according to this philosophy, I shouldn't, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. Where would you be on that scale of 0 to 100? You'll actually be going backwards. You'll be walking towards the route of ignorance, right? And it's like, would you knowingly walk towards ignorance if you know that on the other side, of 100, is complete enlightenment and complete understanding of like the world and reality? I don't know. It's up to you. It's your choice, right? But and ultimately, this is a choice right here. Okay. And you know what? If you do like a study, right? Imagine you two right now, right? One of you guys decides like, you know what? I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to live my life. I'm not going to follow the Buddha. 30 years from now, you're going to see the difference. You can't see it right now because you guys are both at the same level. But 30 years from now, you'll still be stuck at a 10 and you'll be around 60, 70 in terms of this scale, right? Because you put in this time and this effort to develop and to cultivate this like noble life path, right? So that's the answer to like, is the pursuit of nirvana a type of desire? Yes. Yes, it is. However, you shouldn't think about it that way. You should think about it as the pursuit of it is a means to an end. Okay? And this gets complicated because then by walking down this path, it is the result. By walking down this path, you actually are able to really find liberation within yourself, like peace, tranquility, happiness, all that stuff. Now here's the answer to the no part about like why the pursuit of nirvana is not a type of desire. Okay? What's the difference between 99 and 100? It's just one, right? But my question is, how much harder do you have to work to go from 99 to 100 when you're on that level of wisdom, right? And so if 100 is like nirvana, like you made it, like, you know, what's 99? And what does it take to go from 99 to 100? I don't know, this is like a really interesting like thought experiment. But what I was reading is that like the difference between somebody who's at 100, who's achieved enlightenment, and the person at 99, is that the person at 99 has to learn to let go of this entire scale. Let go of this, like, this system that I've created to actually even reach nirvana. The way that I've likened it to is this idea of people, maybe friends that you guys know, who are supposedly like very cool, right? What's this supposed to be? If you say, what's the difference between a person who's actually cool and a person who's not but think they're cool, right? The person who thinks they're cool, right, is attached to this idea of being cool to begin with. Like a lower level person would say, hey guys, I'm cool, right? The person who thinks they're cool doesn't actually have to say that they're cool, but is constantly thinking about, oh, what's cool? What can I do to be cool? Versus a person who is actually cool. The person who's actually cool understands or doesn't even think about being cool. The person just is. The person just lives his or her life. And by virtue of doing so, is actually just cool. Okay? So there's like 3 levels of coolness, just like there's 3 levels of like enlightenment, right? There's a person who's like, first person who thinks they're enlightened or talks about enlightenment and talks about like all these things, right? That's the low level. And then there's the person who like really studies all this thing and like, well, yeah, studies this thing and is trying actively to pursue it. And then there's the last person who does reach enlightenment. The last person just doesn't necessarily like lets go of that desire to even become enlightened, and it just is enlightened. Okay, and so it's kind of a tricky concept to understand, but that's the reason why the answer to the question of is the pursuit of nirvana a desire in itself, the answer is no, to some extent, right? Because when you get to that level, you don't need to pursue nirvana to achieve it, like, and so that's rather complicated, but to understand. But here's the conclusion, okay? The teachings of the Buddha or Buddhism, it's like a raft to get you across this ocean, okay? This ocean of life, right? Once you like are able to cross the ocean, you're at like level 99. How do you get to level 100? You gotta let go of the raft itself, right? And so that's ultimately like to tie all the analogies together. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I kind of wanted to connect everything to the Buddha's last words right before he died. And he died at the ripe old age of 80, right? And I mean, he got sick and then he got better, but ultimately he also knew like the body is ephemeral, right? Temporary. But I really like the very last, like the last 2 sentences that the Buddha, because obviously the Buddha spoke a lot, right? And then all of his teachings, because he was a teacher and he spoke a lot, they got all recorded into like the Dharma and stuff like that, all the holy books. But here's the last 2 words that he said. He said, "Now I address you, perishable of all conditioned things, work out your way with diligence." I can't believe, well, I kind of wonder, like, what would the last 2 things I would say would be? But he addressed all of his followers and he said this. He basically said, don't forget, everything in this world is temporary, okay? That's the first thing that he told, that's the first like warning that he told his disciples. And the last thing he said is, work out your way with diligence. He said, capital Y-O-U, work hard to find liberation. Work hard to cultivate wisdom. Work hard so that you are able to walk down this path of enlightenment, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much it, right? So to summarize this, 2020, new year, be diligent, right? And see if you can sneak in a question or 2. Because like I said, the more questions you ask, the better you get, right? The better you're honing in on your wisdom. And I think for me, that's like it's a pivotal point in time in your like intellectual development, but spiritual as well. Because then you begin to really dig deep into insight into other things about life and about Buddhism, really, frankly. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me for this lecture. Thank you very much. Any questions? Well, if not, then until next time. Thank you. Bye.